I'm National Master Brian Tillis, the Vice President of the Florida Chess Association. We have a lot of invitationals going on right now, and I thought we should do something a little bit special. I have had the pleasure, nay, the privilege to be working with National Master Eric Cooke in his preparations for the US Senior Invitational, where he's representing our great state of Florida. And I wanted to share the 2 games he's played thus far. It is a 6-round tournament that is happening over the course of 2 weekends. Sadly, we got Eric all set up. We got the dual webcam situation going. And his first round opponent failed to show up to the game, so he got a bye. And then lo and behold, we're checking pairings, and I'm assisting Eric with doing some prep. And we see that he's playing the top seed, Grandmaster Fishbein, on board 1 with black in round 2. So it's always fun to work with players that are similar in strength, and in many ways Eric has far more experience than I have, and he is stronger than I am in many ways. It's always a pleasure, though, to work with a player like Eric that has such a zest and love for the game of chess. We were able to do some mashup of old school and new school with preparation, and we were learning from each other as I was assisting him in preparing for his opponents. And I would like to share his games from the Invitational, and let's go ahead and kick this one right off. We're going to be taking a look at the first game with Grandmaster Fishbein, and when we were preparing, we noticed that the GM plays e4 in the majority of his games, but also alternates with d4. So we had a line prepared for each that fell within Eric's repertoire, and e4 popped up on the board, and Eric says, no, we're going with the French. And I'm completely okay with that, being an author on Chessable of Master of the French Defense. Like, okay, I think I can actually add something to this conversation for my fellow master, and we found that Fishbein favors the exchange variation. And it's not often, even as a French author, I can honestly and openly say we are looking forward to an interesting game in the exchange French. But I'm going to show it to you right here because we've got an interesting line. And on knight f3, I initially asked Eric what he does against this line, and he said bishop d6, but then after white plays c4, this is getting one of those good variations of an early c4. And what I recommended in my text was bishop g4 here. And the thing about playing the exchange French overall is you've got to focus on and create any imbalance you can get. With the symmetrical pawn structure, life can be drained out of the position. But Fishbein is a specialist of a particular variation. I believe the earliest game that we found was from '91, where first you give a tickle to the bishop here with h3, and then you follow up with queen e2 check. And this is a very interesting move because it is forcing you, because of the threat of queen b5 here, if I can draw an arrow, making that threat on the b pawn. So we need to go ahead and play queen e7. So if queen b5 happens, we have c6, defending b7. And white doesn't actually want the queen trade, going with bishop e3, and we end up with a very dynamic position with both players castle and queenside. And this is where it becomes interesting because I'm following along, and this exact position is covered in my text, Master of the French Defense. And Eric and I had a bit of a philosophical difference of how this position should be handled. So we had discussed this position before the game, and Eric goes, I'm going with a more dynamic option with knight f6. In respect, Eric is much more of an aggressive player than I am, and the man plays to win on both sides of the board, and you got to respect that. You just must respect it. But personally, I had decided on the line here with move 10 f6. And it's not just my decision here. I mean, you got to go with fire on the board, Alexei Shirov. He played this in '99 in a game against another grandmaster and came away with a win for black. f6, the main idea, is restricting this knight from coming to e5 and being so strong. And we're going to see it in the game, but it's one of those things I like to show the theory. And f6 between Mitkov and Shirov, if you're interested in that game, that's the way to go in this position from the speaker's opinion. But Eric decided to go with knight f6 here and knight e5, and we need to start worrying about that c6 knight being captured and ruining our pawn structure. So Eric follows up with queen e8 and f4 happened. Now, I am not going to say that knight f6 is wrong, because this very natural move f4 here, it's making a threat. I simply want to play f5, and I want to trap your bishop. Looks like a good natural move, but there is an error here, and it is not easy to see. This was Eric's only opportunity in the game to take an advantage with black. Now, if you're in the pause the video type of person to try to figure out things on your own, this would be the time. If you're not, I'm going to keep on going here. So, in the game, Eric played bishop e4 to preserve the bishop. But the bishop isn't flexible on that square, and it's more in the way and a permanent defender. The wrong piece went to e4 in the game, where we could have played knight e4. Now you're saying, well, what about f5? It's sealing in the flavor of my bishop here. Where's he going? What am I going to do? But you actually have great counterplay from the Zwischenzug, that in-between move. First we go knight takes c3. Well, I'm going to have to recapture. But now here's the key. f6, hitting his knight as well. And you go, well, what about if he takes my knight? Lo and behold, the bishop is poisoned, because after queen takes c3, black has a crushing attack due to the threat, very strong threat, of bishop a3 followed by queen b2 mate, where white has to play a move like queen b5, hanging his bishop in order to continue, and black has a huge edge here. So this move, knight e4, with a very, very deep idea, was what needed to be played in this position, and Eric definitely had an advantage. But got to give respect where respect is due. GM Fishbein played an amazing game, and we're going to share it with you. Bishop e4, tickle on the rook. Rook decides to get off of that, and it's natural to look at this and see that g5 is coming. It's going to be bothering our knight on f6. So Eric reacted to this and played h6. But another line that seems pretty reasonable is we need to be aggressive and try to get something done. Bishop b4, and if knight takes, bishop g2, f6 tries to get that strong knight out of e5. And though this is still worse for black, it seems a little bit more reasonable than the game continuation, because if you got to get out of this bind, white is just going to increase pressure and just continue this squeeze that's going to be going on if we don't do something strong about it now. So coming back to the main game continuation after rook g1, we have h6, and after queen b5, adding more pressure to c6, we have another opportunity to fix the problem of this bishop that just seems to be in the way of counterplay with moves like knight e4. Eric in the game played bishop e7, but we have the very strong idea of bishop h7. And the key point is, if knight takes c6 is played to ruin our pawn structure, we have the in-between move, queen takes e3 check. Very strong. So another idea after bishop h7 is queen a4, like we'll see in the main game. Knight takes, queen takes, and knight e4. And this definitely, though it's still better for the first player, feels like it's got more counter chances than what we're going to see in the main game. So queen b5, bishop e7. We have queen a4, knight takes e5, and I don't blame Eric here with his decision. We could capture with the rook, but rook takes e8, d takes e5. This line just really doesn't feel good for black. as this is one of those situations where the minor pieces are going to be much better than the rook in the long term, and this is a technically lost position. So coming back after knight takes e5, queen takes, Eric elected to take with a knight and keep the material balance, but not for long. The bishop is hit. We try to preserve our bishop pair, but it's just nothing doing. Bishop b4, and now the pain has arrived. Bishop takes a7, one pawn falls, and we're going to have to give up the bishop pair in an open position. Knight's not looking good. White's going to be able to slowly improve his position with little to no risk here. Preserves the bishop. No b6, no Fisher trap there. c6. And we're going to quickly go through the rest of this game as White really runs a clinic and just using the extra pawn and the advantage. And Eric does everything he can to try to generate some kind of counterplay, but after rook b3, this is already a crushing position for White. For instance, if knight a6, c3, just, this is all she wrote. We're able to get a rook off the board, but after bishop a5, boom, that's just pain. And in the main game, b6 took place, bishop c6. That's just not going to do it for the rooks. And c4, and I love the technique here where it's the give back just to have the extra pawn and the much better ending, and that knight never really could get going to do anything for black. And when I looked at this position with the engine, it was given somewhere like +8 and then getting higher and higher. And that's going to be all she wrote for game 2 in the senior championship. Again, game 1, Eric got a forfeit win. So in the next video, we're going to be looking at an extremely high quality game by NM Cooke. So be sure to tune in. Thanks.